Welcome to the service clinic at Low Country Harley-Davidson. I'm Doc Harley. I'm rebuilding a carburetor here, and it brought me to thinking. I'm replacing this fuel valve here, and it goes with the float. And the fuel valve and the float regulate how much fuel is in the carburetor. More demand from the motor, the fuel float goes down, lets more fuel in. Less demand, the float comes up, and it slows it down. And I'm setting the fuel float level to be where it starts. So when you turn off the bike, it goes to that position and shuts off the fuel. And there's a particular, for each one, there's a different measurement. I have to hold this at 18, and then I put my vernier caliper, and I want 40 to 43 degrees on the float. So this goes in and out, and I naturally do it. So this regulates fuel, but a lot of you guys out there don't have carburetors. You have fuel injection. So let's talk about fuel injection. Here's a fuel injected bike, and we have a regulator. This regulates how much pressure fuel gets to your throttle body and your injectors. All right. And in this assembly, you have a fuel filter, regulator. You have the pump here. It comes up to the fuel filter and goes in the regulator and then goes to the hose that goes to your connector. So you would say, okay, this is what regulates how much fuel comes into the tank. Yes, but I want to have you start thinking about it, because here's the fuel pump, and where does it go first? It goes to the fuel filter, and then it goes into the regulator. So the regulator keeps this bike at 55 to 60 psi. That's what the specification is. But it's first got to go through the fuel filter. So if the fuel filter starts clogging up from ethanol, from bad fuel, from just fuel itself, and it starts clogging up the fuel before it gets to the regulator, then let's just say 45 amount of fuel is coming out and going into the regulator. So the regulator never has to pop off at 60 plus. It just allows 45 to come through. It cannot increase what the fuel pump does. It just regulates what the fuel comes in. So you guys that change the muffler and say, I don't need a tune, my ECM is going to compensate 10%. Okay, yes, it can do that. But what if the ECM is telling this bike, okay, I want you to be richer, but the fuel filter isn't allowing? Okay, so you bring your bike to a dyno person and say, I want you to dyno it. I did the muffler, air cleaner, cam, I want you to tune it. And he goes up there and he tunes it with a fuel filter that has a lot of miles on it, a lot of fuel that came through it. So he's compensating, moving all the mapping and all the fuel tables to allow as much fuel as possible with only 45 going in instead of the 55, 60. And then down the road, you finally decide to change the fuel filter, and now everything's kind of changed on it. So just in theory, I know I'm skipping a lot of steps, but if the fuel filter is putting out more than 60 psi, and the regulator keeps it at 55, 60, but the fuel filter won't allow the regulator to do its job, and you're getting less fuel down at the throttle body and the injectors, it's not working. Your theory of the ECM is going to compensate isn't really working in theory, I believe. And this motorcycle is even worse because it has no O2 sensors. This is a very early model. So the ECM doesn't have any way to know, oh, I should be giving you more. No, it's just giving you what it was programmed at the factory or what was tuned down the road. And this bike was tuned with a fuel filter that really needs to be replaced. Keep this in mind, guys. You're doing your own maintenance. You're doing your own performance. You're listening to theories on forums that you don't need to do this and that and all that kind of stuff. Some of it's true, some of it's not. But if you don't have a complete system that's working correctly, then your theory might go out the window. So when was the last time you had your fuel filter changed? When was the last time you had your fuel filter changed on a carburetor? For if it's getting clogged up into the gas tank and won't allow enough to go through the petcock for the fuel float to allow enough? These are questions you need to ask yourself while you are maintaining your own motorcycle so you get the best performance out of your Harley-Davidson. Just something to think about here at Low Country Harley-Davidson. I'm Doc Harley. We'll see you next time.